welcome to the Inside Britball podcast. This week, you're stuck with me on hosting duty because Andy has decided to pop off on his summer holidays right at the business end of the season. Definitely poor planning if you're listening, Andy. But tonight I am joined by Stuart and Isaac to wrap up and cover the things that we saw last week and preview the very few games that we have coming up this week. But first of all, I have to mention, Stuart, I can't help but look at your dinosaurs that look like horses in the background.
Yeah, it looks like I'm being chased by an angry red dinosaur, doesn't it? But we are filming a little bit late as well this evening because it is my son's birthday today. So I've done all the pleasantries of hosting the in-laws, which was actually really nice. It always is. He's gone to bed, and yeah, I just haven't had a chance to take any of the decorations down. So for those of you that know Dino Ranch, I currently have Blitz and Clover, I think, are the two that are there. And Tango off the other side. But yeah, it's a bit like the decor in the hotel room. It just catches your eye and we wander off on a tangent, don't we?
Yeah, easily distracted is definitely me for sure. I think that's why Andy doesn't let me host very often, only to cover when he's not here. Although we have split the duties. Thankfully, Stuart is on recording and graphics because I cannot do all of those things at once. Okay, so let's get into it then. We had lots of, exciting, different things happening this week, right? Things that we haven't seen before in Britball. So first of all, we had the arguably not highest priority game, maybe let's put it that way, in Division 1 North, where we had Scunthorpe Alphas and the Merseyside Nighthawks playing in the Northern Final. Now we know that both of these teams have already been promoted to the Prem for next year. So this game was probably just for pride more than anything. And we know that Merseyside had lost twice to Scunthorpe already in the regular season. So this was kind of a, three-peat of what we'd already seen. But Isaac, I'll come to you. Maybe a surprise or maybe not, given the form that the Nighthawks have been on?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a surprise. I mean, they have been on great form since the playoffs, beating the two number one ranked teams from other divisions. So, you could maybe see that they didn't really see the Alphas as a threat and that they could win this game. And throughout the game, they just did that. They found a way to win. They saw what was working for them and just kept going with it. They could have easily scored more. A couple of play calls in the red zone, that could have been different, and they could have easily scored another 2, maybe 3 touchdowns at some points.
Yeah, and Stuart, did you catch any of this game? I think for me, the thing is, Merseyside also went to Scunthorpe and beat them there. This wasn't at home for them, right? So maybe more of a achievement when you look at it in that sense.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I have realised this weekend is that I am not great at watching 2 or 3 streams at the same time. I don't know how people watch NFL Red Zone in their NFL Octo box. I tried a triple box and I couldn't take in anything. But I did stay diplomatically quiet on the preview of this last week for the fear of the Merseyside Nighthawks coming out and beating the Alphas in this third game in the trilogy. And fair play to them. They really did, didn't they? They sort of came out, took it to Scunthorpe. It was a relatively close game. A lot of the film that I did see was kind of midfield, or what we would call the low red zone as coaches, so just in between the 20 and the 30s. And then it has taken them a few times to punch the ball into the end zones, but they did eventually get in there to them 3 times, and also held Alphas to 6, which hasn't been done very often this season, where the Alphas have been held to single digits. Probably hasn't been done this season. Their offense has certainly been on fire. So that matchup difference that Andy was talking about seems like the Nighthawks have watched film, they've adapted and overcome this one. So congratulations to them. There has been some phenomenal meme game on their Instagram as well. So really appreciate a little bit of fun and games with that one. Again, not so much poking fun at the Alphas, but more sort of celebrating their success and reviewing their season. So tastefully done memes as well, which we... some people in Britball won't like, but I quite loved and enjoyed seeing, and had a giggle to a lot of them. So if you guys have put them on your highlights, we can all watch them. If they're lost to the algorithm that is Instagram, then we'll never see them again. But fantastic work.
Yeah, and look, congratulations to the Nighthawks. I think we said this last week, right? None of us saw this coming, week one of the playoffs, let alone here we are after the final, and they've come away as champions. So definitely some momentum for them leading into them going back to the Premiership next year after just one season in Division 1. And maybe question marks around, again, and we've mentioned it, strength of the different divisions, right? Was that division that they were in, arguably tough, given we saw 3 playoff teams come from there and the team that was third or lowest ranked coming out on top compared to some of the others. So maybe some questions that we can ponder in the off season or when we look at alignments for next season and how we resolve this, but definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, so on to the south. Here we go. For as if on cue. We had, what did they call it? Rumble at the Ranch? Was that what it was, Stuart, if I recall, or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Unfortunately, no live horses, Isaac. We were chatting about this on our WhatsApp group for anyone who listened to the podcast last week. And disappointingly, from what I saw, no horses. In fact, no dress-up horses nor people on wooden horses. So all round, maybe a bit of a disappointment in that sense. But depending on whether you're on the offensive or defense side of the ball here, some may have found this game more interesting than others. Stuart, I'll come to you first. Wembley coming on top, but a tighter game maybe than we were expecting.
Yeah, definitely. I think Andy gave us the over-under of 50 on this on last week's pod. And I went under because I feared that this might happen in the fact that both defenses might step up. Again, very sort of fluid football between the 20s. And then when you got in and around there or sort of close to, the difficulty was punching it in, which neither of these two teams really have had all season. So it was a little bit of a surprise to me. I also remember previewing a Stallions game and I couldn't remember the running back's number and it was 33. He had another couple of really big runs that I saw. So obviously he's still doing his thing, but again, just couldn't quite punch it in. And it came down to a field goal within the last couple of minutes, which unfortunately the reasonably reliable Mavs kicker missed just far right as we were sort of watching it from the stream. And yeah, it was just, excuse the pun, a bit of a kick in the teeth because he has been reliable all season. And then, when you a little bit of pressure, final game, they didn't ice him on this occasion. There was one ice in the game as well. Whether that works in the British football, I will never know. But yeah, he unfortunately just pushed it wide right. The other thing to take from this was that we kind of gave them a bit of a plug last week, Depth Chart Sports. They did do a fantastic job of streaming this game. There was a lot of really good graphics, a lot of really good sort of quality film and quality commentary as well. So big kudos to those guys. And I can sort of see that they're going to do well as they progress, obviously into Britball, because that's mostly where their strengths lie. The guys that produce it do have a lot of Britball knowledge, but I feel that they're going to be really strong for the British Universities game come September, October, November.
Yeah, I actually watched. So of the mini games, this was the one that I watched the most of because I didn't try to do the triple box. I decided that this was where I was going to watch. Although, being more offensively minded, I will admit, in parts I did change over to other games to see what was going on or if it was slightly more thrilling from my view. But as you mentioned about the kicker, I think for me, the field goal, the way they did try to ice him that he did land, was arguably a really long one. Like I want to say it was like 52 yards or something.
51 yards, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So they obviously left their fate up to him in the final minutes. But I think the other point that I noticed is, I know Mavericks definitely had their chances. Like they had several opportunities where they were camped in the red zone for multiple downs, and just as you mentioned, were unable to convert. So Wembley Stallions defense definitely held up because there were a couple of plays where there were turnovers and one that I remember where they got, for some reason, I can't remember if it was a blocked punt or a fumble by the punter, I think, even, where the Mavs ended up with it sort of, really deep in Wembley territory. So they definitely had opportunities. Isaac, did you manage to see any of this game? I'm not sure if you did or not.
No, too busy watching the Merseyside game for this one, but
Too far south.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm disappointed quite a lot that there were no horse racing or fake horse racing at halftime. So, yeah. I'm giving you the ideas, guys. You just need to use them. And I might even come that far down south if it happens.
Okay, well, we'll make sure that Wembley and Mavs get that memo. So yeah, and I think, look, shout out to Mavs. Obviously, they went down. So for those who don't know, the final score was 14-11. So hence why that kind of late field goal was key to pushing this into overtime. But what they did do was hold Wembley to a much slimmer scoreline than we've seen all season. I think, what did we say before, Stuart? It was most of their other games have scored at least 30, did we say?
I think so. Yeah. Spreadsheet's open on a different tab. But yeah, it was, I think, 31 or 32, I think, before previously. So at least half of their fewest points scored. Phenomenal effort by the defense of the Mavs.
Yeah, definitely. So I know that probably is little consolation for the situation that you're in now, but a big performance by both teams there. And obviously with this win, that secures Wembley the right to play the Hertfordshire Cheetahs in the yo-yo game for the final Prem position for next year, which I think will be coming up in a couple of weeks, and we will preview at the appropriate time. Okay, so that's it for Division 1 this week, or last week, shall I say. Well, actually, that's not strictly true. That's it for the top of Division 1 for last week. The other game that we had in Division 1 is the opposite end of the table, shall we say, and we saw the Division 1/2, one of these yo-yo games, as we're calling them, happen, where we had the Birmingham Bulls and the Leicester Panthers playing for that right to be in Division 1 next year. I've got that right, haven't I? Yep. Brain processing speed. Probably the score that most were expecting, or the outcome that many were expecting. Isaac, I'll come to you first on this one, given this is probably borderline in the north for you.
Just about, only just. But no, I think it's as I think we all expected, really. Leicester have been incredible all season long. It's not very often that they score under 40 points. I don't think it's really happened this season at all. Really, that they don't score a load of points in the game and then quiet offense is down to barely anything. So it's massive, well done to them, because this season they've used it as a rebuild year in Div 2 and bounced straight back up, and they've done what they needed to do, and now they're back in Div 1.
And Stuart, I'm not sure if you have heard anything about this game, but I know that we had one of our media team, Estelle, our photographer, was at the game and sending us some live score updates. I think for me, what I found interesting was, the first quarter heading into the second quarter was still quite tight. Birmingham, put up a stout defense, but, clearly Leicester ran away with it later in the game. Is that kind of what we expected to happen in this?
I don't know, if I'm really honest. I did expect Leicester to sort of come out and pile on the points. I don't think they got as many as I was expecting. Obviously, they put 63 on Gateshead in the previous round to get into this game. But one thing we do know is that they scored pretty much every single way that you can possibly score in British American football. They definitely got a safety. They definitely scored on offense. Pretty sure they scored on defense. I think at some point somebody mentioned a recovered blocked punt as well. Again, I don't know whether that was scored from, but yeah, they certainly made pretty much every single play that you can make. I don't know if they recovered a kickoff. I can't remember whether Estelle mentioned that in one of our chats. But yeah, they certainly seem like they're an all-round team, and hopefully they can take that momentum going into next season.
Yeah, and obviously congratulations to Leicester on finishing a strong season and earning the right to go back to Division 1. The final score on that one was 49-8, so definitely well in their favour at the end of that game. All right, apologies about that, everyone. We had to take a brief pause. It seems somebody was trying to steal someone else's car. I don't know. No, probably not. From outside my house, which means that the alarm that you could maybe hear in the background was a little bit frustrating. So we just took a pause, but thankfully it stopped. So we're going to pick up where we left off, which I think was talking about yo-yo games and moving on to the equivalent yo-yo games in the South. And there we go, as if on cue. So we had two of those happen this week. We had Berkshire versus Oxford, and we had the Wyverns, I think that's what I'm going with, playing Hereford Stampede. So given this is in the South, Stuart, I'll come to you first. Both of the Div 2 teams won out, with the Div 1 teams effectively being relegated. Was that a surprise or expected, or these games maybe, for me, probably weren't super close, one closer than the other? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think we said last week that we kind of thought it would go this way. We were wondering which Berkshire would turn up, whether it would be the one of sort of early season doors or the whole season. And unfortunately, it seems like it was the majority of the season Berkshire that turned up. They didn't manage to score against Oxford. We know Oxford are a strong team. They obviously scored 28 points, and they go straight back up. Hereford and Oxford came down last year and go straight back up again. So it kind of proves that these yo-yo games might give us some sort of parity depending on what happens again next year, if the competition committee obviously decide to keep them. We kind of previewed that last week. We'll probably do a piece on it after Britball and sort of give our thoughts on this. Isaac, I think he gave his thoughts on it quite evidently last week, but I think we will all give a bit more of a round piece on that next week. But yeah, the other game, Wyverns versus Hereford, probably a little bit closer than I thought. It's, yeah, fair enough. Hereford have to travel a little bit, but Somerset, I think, have done themselves, I wouldn't say done themselves proud, because they've still lost a game and nobody likes to lose games. But they certainly can go away from this holding their heads up high. I mentioned one of my officiating friends tends to give me a rundown of games that he's officiated. And he said there were lots of turnovers early on. Those are his exact words. He hasn't said from which side, but multiple turnovers throughout the entire game by both teams. I know Hereford have a fairly strong offensive line, and he's alluded to that as well, saying that they dominated early on. But then again, as I've said for most of the games, just couldn't quite get the ball in when they got inside the red zone. And then Somerset, he said that the Somerset Wyvern flashed on offense, but just failed to put first downs together, or a string of them at least. They might have put one or two together, but they couldn't drive the length of the field. Somerset scored their first rushing touchdown of the season, but again, doesn't say an awful lot, because I think that was only their second score of the season, wasn't it? But yeah, the word that keeps cropping up to me in his sort of report is turnovers, and that's always going to lead to a game with like a 7-17 difference, or 7-17 points scored. So yeah, I think that kind of, if I remember, this weekend was really, really baking hot as well, wasn't it? So you can't really blame a slippery football or anything like that. So yeah, it's just, it sounds like it was one of those games where neither team's going to come away thinking, yeah, we really put our best football on the field there. But Hereford, you come away, you get promoted back up, recruit again, go again for Division 1 next season. You mentioned that both Div 2 teams went up. If we include Leicester, that's all three Division 2 teams getting promoted.
Very true.
Do do we see all 4 getting promoted when we get the other yo-yo game on the 31st?
Yes, maybe we're all just sitting here contemplating and nodding, I think, forgetting that we're on a podcast. But I think probably many people would say that that's the likely outcome of the other game. But we shall discuss that when the time comes in a couple of weeks. Isaac, is there anything you want to add here, or it's a bit far south for you as well?
Well, Stuart covered it so perfectly. There's no need for me to say all.
Fair enough. So congratulations, Oxford and Herefordshire. Herefordshire? Are they? I don't know.
I think they're just Hereford. I think
Are they just
it was Worcestershire Black Knights, but I think it's just Hereford Stampede.
Hereford, I mean, it's Herefordshire Hurricanes. How's it hurts?
Hertfordshire.
How's it hurts?
Hertfordshire
Hurricanes.
This was a debate we were having pre-recording the podcast. We were having a debate about me being confused about the Hertfordshires and the Herefords and such like. I don't even know if they're geographically near each other. I'll be honest, that's outside of my area of understanding or expertise. But anyway, congratulations to Hereford, promotion back to Division 1 for next year. Right, shall we move on to NWFL?
I'm ready.
We can. Something you're a bit more comfortable with.
You're ready. I'm coming to you first, Isaac, because, I'm eating my words this week. So instead of me talking about this first, I'm going to let you go and see what you think about the results that we saw in the Nines semi-finals last week.
Okay. So, first game is London Warriors against the Solent Thrashers. Solent coming out 14-13 victories. That was possibly the biggest shock of the weekend. I think we can all agree on. We know how dominant the London Warriors have been in the women's game for years, and how dominant they've been this season as well. And the first loss of this season, I believe, for them is in the part where it matters the most, is in the playoffs. And yes, there's some stuff going on social media that they've done a bit unfair, but score more points. Solent went with a clear plan and executed it perfectly, and they've come away with the win. And they're in the final facing Birmingham. That they were in a very, very close game as well, which maybe not so much of a shock because we've seen Teesside this season show that they are a good side and that they can prove that they've got moments with them there where they can actually prove that they are a really, really good team. But Birmingham again proving that they're too much, and at least one of the two that we all pretty much feel like nailed on of the final is in the final, and and then Birmingham will face Solent.
Yeah, I think you've probably hit the nail on the head there about what we said last week about teams that would be in the final. And probably, at least for me, although we haven't discussed Sevens yet, but yeah, this, I would say shock win. Let's be honest, Solent have beaten Birmingham already this season, right? And now they've gone on and also beaten London. Did we think at the start of the season we would be saying a single team, any team, will have beaten both of those, in the season? And I think we can all honestly say no. But, we talked about... Sorry, go ahead.
And I think it's only going to be a really good thing that for the women's game, because if you've got two sides, they're just sat at the top and no one's going to go anywhere near them. Whereas now you've got this playoff where you've got Teesside that, yes, they didn't win, but they're still close enough that next season it gives them a hope of like, yeah, guys, we're literally less than a touchdown away. That's it. Mm-hmm. And, so it's only actually going to help the women's game grow more with, and Solent can be really proud of themselves for what they've done this weekend.
Yeah, and at the start of the season, I think I said that, I was really excited, especially after that first week of games where things were super close, because I think, if I recall correctly, the first games that we saw this season were London Solent and Birmingham Teesside. And I mentioned how excited I was that those scores were close and that we had some real challenges to those two teams at the top. Stuart is fact-checking me while I'm speaking. I can see it on his face. Was I right?
Was it that obvious? You are right. You are right. Birmingham 12, Teesside 8, and Solent 20, Warriors 27. So you were right.
Yeah. There's, I don't remember a lot of detail about everything, but if it's women's football, it just gets ingrained. But yeah, so definitely exciting, and I'm super excited that we have a different challenger to Birmingham in the final. And we will preview that. That's happening at Brit Bowl. But again, I do, Birmingham also going to the final. But as you said, Isaac, shout out to Teesside, who really pushed them. And from what I've seen from social media and some people that I'm friends with on social media and the comments around this game, it was a really, really hard fought game. And I think it did go down to the wire. And Teesside definitely put out, a huge challenge to Birmingham, which is a bit of a bounce back, because if I recall that second game they played against Birmingham, they lost by a much larger scoreline than that first game. I can't remember how many, but I want to say a couple of scores. So they've come out, they've done their research, and Stuart is also now fact checking me. I can see it on his face. I can't remember.
I am trying to as well.
I actually wasn't this time.
No, okay.
But
anyway,
yeah, Solent. The last time they played each other, Solent rounded out 37-24 victory.
So I think Teesside should be really proud, as you said, of what they've put together this season and the performance they've put in, and it just makes things exciting for the final to see a different team, but also, as you say, exciting for next season when we can hopefully all of these teams can keep their squads together and we can really see a battle for those finals places next year as well. Okay, so shall we do sevens as well? Again, I'm eating my words. Again, I feel like all I did last week was make predictions that have gone horribly wrong. Maybe I should take a leaf out of Stuart's book. We had the sevens finals tournament where we had Peterborough and Cardiff and Kent and Hertfordshire. Stuart, I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are first before I give my 2 pennies worth on this one.
I'm going to steal a word off Andy and steal a word off you and use it tonight. It's just chaos, isn't it? Absolute chaos. I mean, we potentially mentioned that the games might be close and the games might be tight. And it depends on how the teams have recovered from their previous tournaments, who they travelled with. But one for Kent to come out and beat Hearts, that was kind of like, okay, could be done. Kent have had a couple of surprise results sort of the back end of the season, and we thought, yeah, okay, that could be where the upset comes from. And then Cardiff have crossed the border and gone into Oxford and gone, you know what, we're going to really turn up and show up this tournament, and beaten Peterborough, who've had a fantastic season. So fair play to Cardiff. I've seen a lot of coverage from this tournament over the weekend, which is fantastic to see for the women's sevens. And I think making it a festival of football, we've had some of the under-19s people that we would normally see sharing content of the women's football. And I think it's great to see that crossover. And it's probably got a lot more eyes on the women's game last weekend. And from what I've seen, Cardiff were producing some quality plays. You've already mentioned a lot of the time, sort of the width of the field. Mm-hmm. And a lot of their plays were sort of outside runs, getting to the boundary and then just running the length of the field. And yeah, several of the plays that I've seen is them sort of really gaining big yardage. And they certainly did that in the first game against Peterborough, who I think will be really disappointed that the finals day is where they perhaps turned up and played their worst football of the season, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think, we mentioned about Hertfordshire, and I said last week it depends whether we see Hertfordshire from the start of the season or the Hertfordshire team suffering with injuries who didn't fulfill their last tournament, right? And it seems probably like it was the latter towards the end of the season that really kind of they struggled with potentially depth and maybe the squad size was smaller, but the standout result, and we will come on to the final game, obviously, in a minute, but the standout result for me is Cardiff not just beating Peterborough, but beating Peterborough relatively convincingly, 26 points to 7. That wasn't just we scraped a win. Keep in mind the reason they're in the final is because they beat the Cheshire Bears by 1 point and got the head-to-head over them. Like, that's how close this was going into, who was going to be at this tournament. And then to come out and convincingly beat arguably the favourite, 26-7 is hugely impressive for Cardiff. So congratulations to them. So what we then had after that was we had the third v fourth place game with Peterborough playing Hertfordshire. A close one, 6 points to Peterborough and 7 points to Hertfordshire. So again, Peterborough not only losing in the first round, but also losing by 1 point in the second round, which was definitely not how we saw this coming out of the weekend, with them finishing in fourth. And then the final being played between Cardiff and Kent, with Kent coming out victorious, 19 points to 13. So a close affair again. And a bit of a turn of fortune for Cardiff, because I think when they'd played Kent previously in the season, they had been quite resoundingly beaten. Although Kent were also beaten by Cheshire. So again, those kind of, I think that the kind of point in these seedings is that this division has been close, I think, all round, especially when you throw the Bears into the mix of this. So congratulations to Kent. Coming away with the Sevens title for the season, and makes things look interesting going into next season. And then, because obviously throw into the mix of this, there's also the conversation of, is anybody going to make the leap to nines? Because that is, optional at this point. It's not kind of a promotion relegation situation like we see in the mixed adult. So I think it's definitely an interesting question, and maybe another one we can ponder in the off season when we're also talking about the style of the yo-yo games. Let's leave it at that. Anything more for any more on NWFL, gents? Other than chaos reigns supreme is my final word on that. Okay, so we also had some under-19s finals. U19s, under-19s. So we had the semi-finals being played. Obviously, the final of the U19s Division 1 will be played at Brit Bowl weekend on the Saturday before the final of the NWF Nines. We had, now this is when we test my memory, and we've already had to have a discussion about logos off air. We had the Edinburgh Napier Knights playing the Lancashire Buccaneers, and the Rushmore Knights, we're all about Knights apparently, playing the London Blitz. So Isaac, this one is firmly with you. So I shall hand over and you can let us know what you think about what happened.
So Edinburgh Napier, first of all, they just played like they have done all season really in that Scottish division. Well, we have questions a lot about Scotland where we don't really know what's going on up there because we haven't got many eyes up there, but also at the same time, the level, we have no idea what it's going to be like, and in player football we finally get to see it, and they've shown that they're just as strong as what they have been looking like all season. Yeah, you could argue that Lancaster have gone up, and they don't really take a lot of numbers to games anyways. They're having to travel all the way up to Scotland, so that they've obviously got a trouble there. But reading their stuff on Instagram and stuff like that they're still proud of their team, because let's be honest, when you're getting beaten that badly, the one thing they don't want you to do is just all your teammates then to start arguing with each other, and I don't think that really happens there. I think the coaches have really got a good feeling around the club and a good culture where it's pretty much like they are a team no matter what. But Edinburgh Napier Knights, deservedly so, go through to the final where they'll be facing the London Blitz, who they don't seem like they can lose. It's they went to Nottingham, who were a higher seed, beat them. Now they've gone to Rushmore, who are reigning champions, I believe. Stuart, I think.
Yeah,
reigning champions, and just gone and just scoring 54 points on a reigning champions team. When it's Rushmore and they've got this entire network from the adults all the way down to 16s that are just excellent at every single level, and do that, it speaks highly for what the Blitz are going to do, and it really, teams up for that great final where you've got a team coming all the way down from Scotland and a team going up from London, and they're meeting in that Midlands area, which is just confusing. and yeah, it's going to be an absolute lights out final.
I know Coventry's a delightful place. I know Coventry's a delightful place, Isaac, but a little bit more passion and enthusiasm would be great.
I've got bad memories from my time in Coventry.
I think I'll add my 2 pence as well. Sorry, Kiwi.
Okay.
There's a massive delay here. My Tesco's Wi-Fi that you all joke about is doing its finest to curtail whatever it is I have to say. So hopefully, when I hopefully when I master all this together, I'll cut out all the delays and it'll sound pretty slick. But right now, at the point of filming, it's not great. But hey, I'm going to echo what Isaac said about the Lancashire Buccaneers. One, just to sort of correct him, because he'll probably have a rant at me like Andy did if I don't correct the way that you're saying team names. Lancashire Buccaneers. Yeah, I had to get used to that for the first few weeks when I was putting graphics out. But yeah, we actually had Napier messages about the way that the Buccaneers sort of did themselves credit over the entire game. We saw on the live stream of Manchester versus Lancashire that their squad was probably only like 24, 25. And I think they travelled with less to Edinburgh. So fair play to them for fulfilling that fixture and not just saying, oh, we're not going to travel, you guys get the win. And also the very complimentary of how well they were coached, how plucky they were, the standard of football that they were playing. Napier did point out the fact that they blocked quite a few of the punts, so they probably ended up with shorter fields than they were expecting. They were also really harsh on themselves, that they missed quite a few PATs, a few field goals, and that they also turned the ball over themselves. So a really honest sort of assessment from Napier, and we appreciate sending that sort of honesty in, and also the sort of hidden praise, I guess you'd call it, of Lancashire there. And also just flicking back over to Rushmore Blitz that Isaac did cover, I just wonder whether this elongated U19 season has hurt the Rushmore Knights as well, because we mentioned that both Caesars and Blitz had players missing in the last round. I just wonder whether that's the case for Rushmore in this round, whether they had some of their athletes missing, because we know that they're a phenomenal team. They're really well coached. They've got athletes all over the board. What's made them lose 21-54 to, okay, a very good London Blitz side? But yeah, this got my ears up, and I was like, okay, what can I hear? What can I see about this game? And I've heard and seen very little to give coverage to, unfortunately. So when we're at Brit Bowl on the Saturday, I might try and grab a couple of people and say, what happened in that semi-final? Because, yeah, it shocked me.
Yeah, definitely an interesting one. And not just a small scoreline either. Like, it was a 54-21 win for the Blitz. So it wasn't like it was, closely ground out. They definitely came in and dominated. So we shall look forward to seeing the final at Brit Bowl. As we mentioned, we will cover that in no doubt our special edition Brit Bowl episode prior to the weekend. We also had in the other half of the festival of football, shall we say, where the NWFL Sevens took place, is the U19's Division 2 Finals tournament. Where we had the South East Legion, the Poole Dolphins, the Yorkshire Assassins and the Wembley Stallions competing for that Division 2 U19 title. I'm not going to say anything, Isaac. I'm going to hand it over to you, because I'd love to hear what you've got to say about what came out of this after I already had to eat my words on NWFL.
Yeah, well, I wanted Yorkshire to win, but, that just doesn't happen, does it? But no, like, a massive congratulations to the Poole Dolphins, who rounded out winners of the Div 2 national final. They showed up this game what they're about, coming in as the lowest ranked side, beating South East Legion, who are number 1, and then going on then to beat Wembley Stallions, who beat a decent Yorkshire side. It really shows how strong they are, and that playoff football, anything can happen. And earlier in the season, if they didn't have that tournament that they didn't get cut early, it could have been a different ranking story and all sorts of different stories for them. But you've got to say that maybe the biggest issue is we've finally seen what the North is really like against proper competition. We kind of had issues with it because there was only 3 teams: Yorkshire, Scunthorpe and Darlington. And obviously Yorkshire coming out of that as the number 1 seed, and then it kind of shows what's happened this year when they've lost both their games against sides that arguably, if they're number 2 seed, I think, going into it, they should be beating the Wembley Stallions at 3, and then you could argue this should also look good against the South East Legion. But, take nothing away from them 2 sides who came onto it, because they finished 2nd and 3rd now. So, no, it's something that's good, and hopefully that now we see a lot more 9-on-9 sides grow from this. Like we've seen North East Giants who did it. They won the Div 2 championship and then went up. Obviously now they've come back down to Div 2, but hopefully, especially with teams like the South East Legion and Poole Dolphins who have done so well this season, they can go up to the 9v9 world and really show what they're about.
And I think that's the key point that, I also mentioned it on the NWFL Sevens, right, with these teams still playing the Sevens League. We hope to see more teams moving to the Nines format in both of these competitions, because that's ultimately, the full field version of the game. So, recruit well, recruit hard, and hopefully we can see some of these teams, taking their place in the Nines competitions, as you say, next year. Okay, I think I've covered everything. Unlike last week where Andy forgot something, and previous weeks where I also have been known to forget things. I think that was everything. Yeah? We're good. Okay.
Isaac's nodding his head.
Yeah.
Were you nodding your head because no, we've forgotten something? Or are you nodding your head because no, you think that's it?
We've got previews to do. But,
there we go.
But we've covered everything.
Right.
I think.
I'll got confused and all
that.
Arguably, we only have one preview to do this week. Well, 2 games, but one format.
Yes.
So let's move on to that then. If I've not forgotten anything in the roundup, we have the Premiership Semi Finals happening this week, which will give us our Britpole contenders for this year. We have the Manchester Titans taking on the Bristol Aztecs, and we have the London Warriors taking on the Coventry Phoenix, where we see those North v South games. I'm going to come to you first, Stuart. Let me know what are we thinking here? Are we thinking this is going to be a Southern whitewash like we had last year, or do we think these Northern teams can give them, a challenge, potentially come away with a win? Manchester have got Brit Bowl history. What are you thinking?
They will certainly be needing to draw on that history, draw on the experience they've got of winning semi-finals previously. Whether they can do it, we've seen that semi a couple of times over the last few years. And I'm going to pass. I'm going to let Isaac come onto that. I feel like he can probably give a bit more of a balanced view, maybe, or maybe he'll just be bluntly honest like he was last weekend. But speaking of blunt honesty, I'll come on to the other semi-final, and I've got a lot of friends involved with the Coventry organisation, but I don't see them coming away with a win from Greenwich against the London Warriors. They have been probably the biggest and most open team, saying that they are in a rebuild phase. They're in year 2 of it, and I still think that they're superseding what they expect. And I think travelling down to London, it'll be a good yardstick of how far they've come. But I just don't see them, unfortunately, winning that game. I think it'll be more a case of taking away the little wins. I've coached in games that are as tough, and it's coming away with the little wins, first downs. Can we get a touchdown? Can we create turnovers? I'm sure my inbox is going to be blasted by these friends that I've got. They may not be my friends by the end of the podcast. But yeah, I can't see anything but a London Warriors victory in this one, I'm afraid.
And to maybe give some context to that statement, right, for all of those people from Coventry who may be DMing Stuart and complaining at the moment, London have been entirely dominant all season, right? They drew against the Aztecs in the final game of the season, which we did talk about, but even that's not really a blip. They didn't lose. And they've just dominated in all of their fixtures, right? So, whereas in the North, we've seen this up and down, different teams, results going opposite ways, much closer competition. And I think, anyone who is picking a Coventry win is definitely betting on the underdog, shall we say. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But coming on to the other semi-final, Isaac, that Stuart has so kindly left for you, which I mentioned earlier in Manchester and Bristol, being played in Manchester. Whether that's a point to be discussed or not, we shall see. And I think, Stuart, as Stuart said, we've seen the semi-final a couple of times. If I recall correctly, they've won one each of the semi-final. I think Manchester went the first year and then Bristol went last year. So what are your thoughts?
So I think that it's going to be a tough one for Manchester, to be honest. I think you look at the roster that Bristol have, and they have just got people with so much experience and experience in other countries and winning experience. And I think that could be the thing that takes them that one step further than what they've ever been. And you look at the last game against London Warriors, that it were a draw. It was a great result for the Aztecs, and one that they've been wanting for ages, because the Warriors have been untouchable for so many years, and that can only give them confidence. I think the Manchester Titans will lean on that home advantage a little bit more, playing at Bellevue at the NSS, and it's going to help them a lot. But I think that Bristol could be that little bit too strong for them, and they've got some incredible coaching there. But so have Manchester. But I think this year, especially because of how good Bristol have been playing, yes, they've had a couple of blips along the way, losing to the Blitz, losing to the Warriors, but still, I can see an all-South final again, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and do we think that Bristol's experience in Europe that they've also had this year will maybe give them that additional edge over Manchester this year that they haven't had before?
It could do, but I don't know, because it was hard for them, because they played one and won it, and then the second game were in Sweden, but they lost, didn't they? And it was quite like a showing of what happened. But no, I think they'll take that as a learning thing, and to learn from what other great sides they have in Europe, because Manchester did that as well. They went on that European competition, showed what they were about. But no, honestly, I think that it could be a great game, and it could be quite a close one as well. But I do see Bristol just being a little too good and having a little bit too much experience for the Titans to handle.
Now, Stuart, I am sure you mentioned that there is a live stream of this Manchester-Bristol game.
I saw on the Bristol's poster that there was a YouTube logo. So I don't know who's live streaming it, and I don't know where the live stream is going to be. I don't even know whether they've just left that on by accident. But yeah, Manchester tend to stream their home games. Wow, I'm struggling with words. You can tell it's a late podcast, can't you? Manchester tend to stream their home games. So I assume it would probably be on the Manchester YouTube page. They've done a fantastic job of streaming all season, with some strong commentary as well. So yeah, keep your eye out on either team's socials and also on ours. And as soon as we see it, we'll try and share it across our socials. That's also Saturday, by the way. So the Manchester game is Saturday, the London game is Sunday.
Fantastic. I think that's all for Britball this weekend. I obviously am going to mention that we have the GB women's tackle team playing Finland this weekend at Bucks Park in the first game of the new European Championship, which takes place, those of you may remember previously, it was in a tournament style, but last couple of years and also now in this new championship, they are doing it as like individual games that all add up and contribute to the overall European Championship. So that is happening. Kickoff is 12 p.m, I believe. Stuart informed me because I didn't know. I'm hoping to be there myself. I don't know, Stuart, do we know if there's going to be a live stream of the GB game?
To be confirmed. There was comments by BAFA underneath the post on social media saying that they were just looking at firming those up. So yes, I believe so. But yeah, to be confirmed. Again, watch across their channels, watch across our channels, and we'll get it shared as best we can as soon as we know.
But please, if you are, free, if you want to go watch some quality women's football, Finland are always a tough challenge and a bit of a nemesis for the GB team. So if you want to see a good game of football, please do go and support it in person. But if there is a live stream, we will share the details. I think I've covered everything. Did I miss anything? Nope.
Don't think so. I know I have shared in our community group about a fundraiser that's happening this weekend. It's for the Bournemouth Bobcats. One of their photographers, again, I've explained it in the chat, but I'll just mention it here because I've spoke with him quite a lot as well. And he's taken a few great photographs of me. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with motor neuron disease just over a year or so ago. He's provided us with photographs and also the BAFRA media team. So I really wanted to give Chris Coop his shout out and also what Bournemouth are doing for him as their unfortunately ex-photographer now. The disease has taken away his ability to shoot his fantastic photographs. So if you can just pop across into the community group and donate as little or as much as you can to help research against what can be a horrible disease.
Fantastic. And I guess good luck to them for what they're doing. I think I read it's a challenge. They're pulling a plane. Did I read?
Yeah.
Am I remembering that correctly? I'm not sure what size
you did.
plane.
There's a big photograph of a bobcat trying to pull a plane. So good luck to you guys, because the weather's meant to turn better at the weekend again. So let's hope you're not doing it in 30-degree heat as well, because that would be horrible.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, I think we shall wrap it up. So thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Isaac, for delving into the chaos that we had last week and previewing what we've got coming up this week. Please do support the GB game if you can, and give us a like or a subscribe. Thank you for listening or watching. I'm sure Andy's going to tell me I've forgotten something, but he's not here and it's my show today. So thanks, everyone.